the Legal Corner podcast series. Welcome to today's episode of The Legal Corner, a podcast which covers a variety of legal issues to keep you informed. Hosted by attorney at law Colin Denoon and communications specialist Leonardo Torres. It's a pleasure to be with you again for another episode of the Legal Corner podcast series. This is episode number 3 as we slowly get into season 3 of the Legal Corner podcast series. We thank you so much for your support and your listenership over the past few years. Today's episode is entitled Fintech, and our guest today is no stranger to the Legal Corner podcast series. As a matter of fact, she was a guest back in season 1, episode 17, and that episode was entitled Women in Law. And we are so happy to have her back again for another episode here at the Legal Corner podcast series. But before I bring her on, just a brief introduction of who she is. Our guest today is Miss Bellina Barrow, and she's a principal attorney at Tenoreque Legal, which is a virtual legal practice that she established in Q4 of 2021. At Tenoreque Legal, her primary practice areas are civil law and litigation, corporate and commercial law, inclusive of fintech, and contract law, public administration, employment, and sports law. She was admitted to legal practice in Trinidad and Tobago in 2012 and in Antigua and Bermuda in 2014, where she practiced for over 4 years. And she was also called to the bar in the British Virgin Islands of March of this year. Prior to her legal career, she was a human resource professional in Trinidad and Tobago and in the United Kingdom. She graduated from the Hewardin Law School in 2012 and the University of the West Indies, Cavell campus in 2010. She also holds a Bachelor's of Science government degree with minors in Human Resource Management and Management Information Systems from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, where she was awarded in 2005. Good day to you, Miss Barrow. How are you doing today?
Good day, Leonardo. Thanks for having me. I'm good, thanks.
It's such a pleasure to have you back again as a guest after such a lovely episode 2 seasons ago, when we discussed women in law. We have a different topic today, a very interesting one. And as I mentioned earlier, it is entitled Fintech. And let me hand it over to you one time. Tell us, what constitutes Fintech?
So Fintech is really the term Fintech is really a blend of the words financial and technology. And it essentially involves the use of new and innovative technologies to automate and improve delivery and use of financial services. It is not a new concept, really. It's just possibly coming to the fore, being highlighted a little bit more, especially since we are coming out, or it came out of the pandemic officially. But it's all around us, actually, because the new and innovative technologies are some of the examples are like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, QR codes, big data, blockchain. Those are just some of the examples, and it's at work in terms of you're using fintech when you are accessing your online banking. You're paying for purchases using a smartphone if it has a mobile wallet on it. If you're using your Visa card, which has the contactless credentials to tap and pay, that's fintech at work. If you have government housing in Trinidad and you are making your HTC payments, you're using their platform to make your payments for your unit. If you're an attorney, you're paying your fees via judiciary site, which is powered by a fintech company. One of the fintech companies powers their platform, their court pay platform. And there are other examples in terms of the currencies that's fintech at work, which I will get into a little bit more. But it's all over, and it's not a now thing. It's been around for a while.
Okay, thanks for that introduction of what fintech is. And I'm a bit surprised because, I mean, most of us and many, I'm sure, if not all of our listeners, utilize at least one of those examples that you would have made mention of. And, you mentioned that it's really an integration of um, financial services with technology. And we are very happy that you would have given us those examples. Can you talk to us now about if there are any legislative framework that governs the use of fintech?
Sure. Well, Trinidad was fairly new. I would say new to the party, or late to the party, if you want to say that, because only in 2020, in terms of the region, I think we started to get serious about developing legislation. So our central bank, which has the overarching responsibility for payment systems in Trinidad, which includes the issuance of electronic money and other responsibilities via the legal notice called the e-money issue order that came into effect on the 4th of August 2020. So that's in the height of the pandemic. So that order allowed a category of persons to be licensed as e-money issuers. That authority to allow that category of persons emanates from the Financial Institutions Act 2002, Section 17.4, and that provides for categories of persons other than licensed financial institutions to issue electronic money or e-money. So essentially, under the Financial Institutions Act, banks could issue e-money, but the e-money issue order allowed for another category of entities to be able to issue e-money, right? So the act defines e-money, which is a monetary value represented by a claim on the issuer, which is stored on an electronic device, issued on receipt of funds of an equal amount to the monetary value. So some examples of e-money are e-wallets, digital wallets, mobile wallets, prepaid bank cards. Prepaid bank cards are not somewhat popular in Trinidad and more popular in the States. So in addition to that major piece of legislation which came in 2020, there are also other guidelines and regulations. So the sector has three main regulators: Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago Securities Exchange Commission. And if a particular entity has any other specialized services that they offer, obviously if there's a regulator for that sector, they will be governed by the rules, laws, regulations of their sector. So Central Bank also has guidelines, and their act also governs particular fintechs, or it governs how particular fintechs should be enter the system. So if you're a payment service provider, you must be registered pursuant to Section 36 CC, subsection CC of the Central Bank Act, and you're guided by the Payment Service Guideline number 3. If you are interbank payment service operator, you're registered pursuant to the Financial Institutions Act, Section 93.1, and guided by Payment Service Guideline number 1. So that's just the general gist of some of the guiding laws, regulations, guidelines that govern fintechs operating in this sector.
Okay. Can you mention now what are some of the benefits of having a digital currency?
So I'll first generally define a digital currency, and could broadly be said to be any currency, money or money-like asset that is primarily managed, stored or exchanged on digital computer systems, especially over the internet. So there are three types of digital currency generally: cryptocurrency, virtual currencies, central bank digital currencies. In Trinidad, cryptocurrency is not regulated or by our regulators. It's not legal tender. So I'll just put that plug there. So anytime anybody is engaging or transacting or investing in cryptocurrency that who's based in Trinidad, they're really doing so at their own risk. So the benefits, some of the benefits. So each type actually has its own benefits. I'll give the general benefits for digital currency, and then I'll get into some of the benefits of the two of the types mentioned. So the general benefits are the faster transfer and transaction times. There's low cost. There's no physical manufacture needed in terms of banknotes, because it's not everything is done digitally. So you don't have the problem of banknotes being destroyed. It simplifies the production and distribution methods, so there's no need to have any transport of banknotes, because obviously everything is being done electronically. Cheaper transaction costs because there are no middle person intermediaries, and it's decentralized, so it's not prone to government manipulation, interference, or censorship. In terms of the particular two of these types, so if I would, while these are not applicable or not operationalized in Trinidad yet, so cryptocurrency, some might say that you have greater privacy than in centralized finance systems, which is the traditional financial system that operates currently. The decentralized nature of the cryptocurrency instills trust in the system and the process. It makes it secure because it's based on something called Merkle trees, which is the basis for the blockchain, and every new link is tied to the link behind it. So a person who might be trying to commit fraud kind of change the historical entry without affecting every other link or link entry on the chain. The distributed nature of the computers that power the cryptocurrency. If one node is tampered with, which is a node or computer or hard drive or server, the data is not compromised, and it's based on a consensus mechanism, which some say it makes it somewhat cyber resilient. In terms of the central bank digital currencies, which again, I said that is not operationalized in Trinidad and Tobago, but it's operationalized in some other territories. The OECS has Dcash, Jamaica, Jamdex, Nigeria has eNaira, Bahamas has the Sand Dollar. So a central bank digital currency is essentially a digital currency which is issued by a monetary authority, and it exists purely in a digital form. There are different types. The wholesale, the acronym for central bank digital currencies is CBDC. So they're wholesale CBDCs, and they're general purpose or retail CBDCs. What you find is that some of the pros of the CBDCs provides a stable unit of account, which functions as both a medium of exchange and a store of value. It's a countermeasure for the widespread digital ledger technologies such as blockchain, which powers the cryptocurrency. Other benefits are continued access to central bank money, helps with the obligation that the central bank has to the public, and it lends to resilience in distribution and use of available funds. It also improves diversity among available payment systems and allows for better cross-border payments for international trade, which could help to lessen the need for Forex, which we know we have somewhat of a problem in Trinidad. There's also the possibility of protecting monetary sovereignty, and it could be used as a means to implement various economic simulation policies. So those are the pros of the cryptocurrencies and the CBDCs, and also the digital currencies as a whole.
Okay, quite a slew of benefits, and I'm trying to figure out now, are there any flaws? But before we get to that, we're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Okay, and welcome back to the Legal Corner podcast series. Thank you for staying with us. Now, Ms. Barrow, right before the break, we were talking about some of the benefits of having digital currency. And I was mentioning that, it's quite a slew of benefits. It's a lot. And you have me thinking now, are there any drawbacks to having digital currency?
Certainly, there are drawbacks, like with anything in life. So generally, if we look at digital currency, general disadvantages, you have problems in terms of the needs for storage and processing infrastructure. There's a susceptibility to hacking because of the digital nature. So actually, one example is that monies could be stolen from an online wallet if protocols are changed to make them, or protocols could be changed to make an online wallet unusable or inaccessible. There's a volatility in value, which I'll explain more as I give the cryptocurrency and the CBDs. The cryptocurrency example, and the volatility in value could obviously result in wild price swings. And then you could generally say digital currency is not widely accepted yet around the world and by retailers, so that you can't necessarily use it to pay a bill at every entity you go to. The transactions can tend to be irreversible. So if there's a mistake or there's fraud, then that's a bit problematic. And then there's a steep learning curve for users. I mean, the general public wouldn't know all the ins and outs of it. So fine, because of that, they're not going to go any bank and get that information. You'll have to do their own reading. So that's one of the disadvantages in terms of the accessibility of information and the learning curve for new users. If I drill down to the particular type, so disadvantages of cryptocurrency, again, you see that which one was touched is that it's not widely accepted around the world yet. Another thing is that it's not widely regulated in all countries. A very critical thing which relates to the volatility is that it's not backed by a centralized issuing authority and intrinsic goods such as gold or silver. So that could prove problematic because it's not backed by cash, gold, or silver. So it could be prone to depreciation, and the value could be could have swings in it, and it's very ad hoc because it could depend on the value that the owners and the investors ascribe to it. Trading in cryptocurrency against fiat currencies, which is the fiat currency is what we operate in now in Trinidad, remains difficult. There are also problems because of the transnational nature of cryptocurrency. You have problems with locating the different jurisdictions because servers and nodes are operating around the world. So that could mean there could be conflict in illegal frameworks that governs any dispute. There's also a big thing, in laws or jurisdiction. So could be problematic to determine the residence country of cryptocurrency software because of, again, the lack of a physical location for the ledger. And also a big thing in law is about what if it's a transnational transaction, what is the applicable law, the governing law. So selecting the correct jurisdiction could be problematic and for disputes and enforcing the applicable laws. Generally, some countries have made strides to try to address some of these challenges with cryptocurrency. Recently, you had in 2023, the EU, because there was an issue with a company last year, a big crypto company, which had of November last year, which came to light, that had a spill-on effect in the sector. So they tried to address that by the issue of new rules and regulations to trace crypto asset transfers to prevent money laundering, and to create or to develop common rules on supervision and customer protection. So that essentially they want to be able to trace crypto assets just like you could trace any fiat currency transaction or any wire transaction, any traditional money transfers. Those rules, those EU legal and regulatory measures are going to be supposed to be rolled out in 2024. And another drawback is said that the cryptocurrencies, some say that it's a harbor for criminal organizations. It's a new way for persons to commit fraud and money laundering because of the private nature of it. And it could host other financial crimes because of the private nature, as I said, and the general anonymity of the currency. Some of the drawbacks, I'll go back into some of the drawbacks of the CBDCs. So CBDCs are based in a centralized financial system, which puts control in the hands of the central bank. All right. And that doesn't give us consumers or citizens much choice in terms of keeping and storing cash without having to divulge information. Because by virtue of you storing your cash or getting paid into a bank account, certain information is automatically or data is available to the bank about you, your spending habits, your transactions, etc. So the privacy that you have with the cryptocurrency space, you don't have that in a CBDC because that is a digital currency that's run by the central bank. So it's the transactions is a fully traceable digital commodity, which keeps details on how the commodity is kept, how long it is held, where it is stored or spent, to whom it is transferred, and if it would be available to third parties. So that, in a nutshell, that's some of the disadvantages of the CBDCs.
Okay, thanks for enlightening us of all of those drawbacks. And I guess as citizens, as members of the public, or just our listening audience, wherever in the world you are, I guess these are very important things to make a note of as, this kind of technology or financial technology starts to get a little more widespread. But that kind of gets me to my next question. You did mention earlier in the episode that Trinidad and Tobago is a bit late to the party as it pertains to this type of financial technology. And I just want to know, of course, Trinidad, but the wider Caribbean as well. Do you believe that such countries will be cashless at any point?
I believe they will be, if not totally cashless, but they might be operate in less cash. The cashless goal, it was articulated by powers that be in Trinidad a couple of years ago. Whether it is a front burner priority or focus for Trinidad now currently and the wider Caribbean, and how much attention is getting is still questionable. Because to get to the point of being cashless, we have a lot of work to do. The single most significant piece of legislation that I would have referred to earlier, the e-money issue, that it can't stop there. There's so many things to do for us to transition in the fintech space. So we have to become cashless, we have to create a more enabling legislative and regulatory environment, which will pay attention to fintech legislation, digital assets legislation, e-commerce, electronic transactions, data protection and privacy, cross-border data flows, cybercrime and security, also issues of competition, consumer protection, dispute resolution. In addition to that, as I said, because this might seem all very new to people, because it's happening, but they just don't understand that it's happening and they don't know what it constitutes as, which was your first question, and how much is that work already. So you have to focus on more public education to improve digital and financial literacy. Additionally, we'll have to get greater technical and legal harmonization to reconcile differences in procedural requirements. So a point to note is that, okay, different islands, or the OACS, Jamaica, Bahamas, they have their CBDC. So it's always key that there's interoperability between those. So if Trinidad is to create a CBDC some point, it has to be able to transact with other countries. So is that kind of relates to the whole harmonization, but the harmonization in not only technical and legal, but can't happen if the legal framework isn't there. And obviously the technical would come with obviously more innovators, more companies coming into space. But they wouldn't come to the space if they don't have the environment, the legal environment. Because I can't come to the space, and right now I can't come to the space and offer cryptocurrency services because that's not allowed in Trinidad, right? So you have to create the environment for more things to happen. But to create the environment, you have to have the legislative and regulatory backdrop. But it's not totally a dismal outlook in terms of how quickly we get there. Because, we have made some strides recently. In July 2023, the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center opened the One Fintech Avenue in Port of Spain, Trinidad, which is a space for local and international fintech stakeholders to work, connect, collaborate, and ideate on fintech-enabled transformation projects and access accelerator and incubation programs, funding, and trading. So these strides to get to the point of less cash or cashless, I would say we have to continue to make those improvements already mentioned, because then there's many benefits to be had. You have some of what I alluded to before, the reduced transaction costs, and which could be passed on to end users, improve efficiency in the financial markets, financial development and inclusion, especially of the underbanked and the unbanked, which is a problem. We have a significant unbanked and underbanked population in Trinidad. Us getting to the point of being cashless will mean we have ease of access to funds, that this digital technology allows for people who live in rural areas to be able to do transactions without having to come out of their village, take X amount of buses, taxis, etc., to just do one transaction in the bank. They could just operate if we have the technology which allows some of it even doesn't even have to operate on with internet. Some of them are, in some countries they've developed technology which you don't need internet, you don't need a smartphone, right? So if we are to get to that stage, people in rural areas would be included in the financial sector, and that just eases their lives and eases their business transactions. And with this will obviously come greater competition in the sector if we are to get to that point of cashlessness or less cash. We will also reap the benefits of reduced costs and no costs if we totally become cashless and have a digital currency. We may not have to produce much banknotes and physical currency, and because that is actually an expense, production and minting, etc., of physical banknotes and coins. You have, because actually MasterCard estimated some years ago that accounts for at least 1% of the GDP of countries worldwide to mint, process, and distribute banknotes. So we have those benefits to enjoy if we get to that cashless state. It could also help to fight crime, corruption and organized crime, so I don't see why we shouldn't be almost racing to the point, obviously in a measured way, obviously in an informed way. But hesitancy is not going to make it go away. If everywhere around in the world it's happening, you'll be forced into it, and you'd rather be prepared and instead than be forced and then have to be operating on the back leg.
Okay, understood. So some strides, but it's going to take some more time. It's going to take some more legislation. It's going to take some more hands on deck and a more collaborative approach, especially legislatively, in terms of the drafting out of laws and those things, as you would have made mention of. But I too would like to see it happen. I hope that the Caribbean gets there sooner rather than later. And as we prepare to bring the curtain down on today's episode, I just had one last question before we go. What would you say are the hindrances to the widespread adoption of fintech in the Caribbean?
Some of the hindrances involve a lack of digital readiness of some countries. If digital readiness in terms of the lack of digital infrastructure and access and inclusion, and there's a digital divide in some countries in terms of the smartphone access and mobile internet access and penetration. Another thing which I would have said a number of times before is the level of digital and financial education and literacy. People will not hop onto the technology or start to use it unless they are sensitized to it, they are educated about it. So the benefits have to be brought home to them. It has to be carried or disseminated to the public in a digestible form, so that at every level they could understand what is out there, what could be used, how they could use it safely. There also has to be public education, or not the change in the education drive has to also be executed in our schools. So it's said that the curricula in terms of computer science and ICT hasn't necessarily changed for several years. So while, yes, this has a technical component, a financial component, and a ICT component, fintech, but elements of this area could be introduced at various levels of education, so that the education is not only taking place at the level of an adult learner already in the banking system. It could take place from at earlier stages in education for a child or a teenager. We have the legislative and the regulatory inadequacies and restrictions. The law and the policy is not moving quickly enough to keep in step with the pace of innovation of these emerging technologies that's happening like a rapid pace around the world, even years before this podcast. So the existing legal and regulatory environment would not allow for the full introduction of fintech, particularly in Trinidad. The lack of technical and legal harmonization, because sometimes as a region, it all like take for example, EU was able to institute those new rules and regulations to combat a problem that was happening with fraud, etc., in the cryptocurrency space. So that's like economic union. We have an economic union in the OECS, right? The ECCU. The problem is that while we might do our legal work and beef up our legal and regulatory landscape, we have to have that harmonization again across the region. So we're not necessarily operating in silos. Then we could really reap the benefits of some of the technology once it could, work throughout the region. Because some of our problems are region against the world. It's not just a one island problem, like the problem we're having with the fall of intermediary banks. That's not a one island problem. So if we could come up with solutions so that we could alleviate some of these issues as a collective, then it only stands to our benefit. Then you have the problem of identity management, data protection, which relates to the laws, cybersecurity, which is a major problem in the region, cybersecurity and privacy. Those pose problems in our region on a normal basis. And those need to be addressed hand in hand for us to be operating in the fintech space in a safe way and at the level of our contenders or the other countries in the world. You also have the hesitancy, fear, and lack of will of the decision makers and persons in positions of power. Not unique to Trinidad, not unique to the region. Some people fear what they don't know, right? People fear what they don't understand. One of my facilitators in one of the fintech courses I was doing said he was a regulator at one point, right? Early in when fintech was fairly new to that territory. And his answer was no to everything, but it was no because he didn't understand the technology. He didn't understand the inner workings. But that's where the building the capacity of the regulators and the people who have to make the laws and make these decisions has to come, because education is not just for the people using the system, the citizens. Everybody's a citizen, so you have to understand it at a high level for the regulators and decision makers, so that you're not afraid to inquire into something new, to embrace something new and make the steps legal, etc., to have that come to fruition. They also just have the general fear and hesitancy of the average citizen and consumer. They might perceive that they have a loss of privacy, and that is understandable. While it is a benefit, because some platforms are very private, it could also, I could see why it could be a fear, because there might be a loss because of our current cybersecurity and cybersecurity space is not at the level that it ought to be. So I could see why consumers could fear if the whole digital financial services becomes a norm. Another thing is the insufficient resources to supervise and regulate the activities. So capacity, as I said, is the thing. Capacity building, training of regulators and those who need to implement or develop or govern or enforce. And so it's not only about the lack of capacity, but also the manpower, lack of people. Because if you have X amount of regulators assigned to normal work, with the fintech sector booming, that augments the work. So you need more regulators. One, in terms of numbers, and you need more regulators with specialist skills, because the kind of regulation they will be doing for, or the kind of monitoring, evaluation, enforcement they will be doing for fintech might have different nuances than a regular company. So that's pretty much some of the hindrances I think the region is facing, but it's not an impossible challenge to overcome.
Yeah, I was now about to say that. I mean, I feel it feels a bit overwhelming, but for some of those points that you would have raised, it certainly doesn't seem that impossible. I mean, I tend to say sometimes that, if other countries can do it, then why can't we, Um, and I mean, it's really on that note, I really want to thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening on such an important topic. I mean, I felt like there was a lot that we covered, and your information was so far and wide and easily understood. And I hope it would have benefited our listeners today. And again, I really want to thank you again for being a guest today. And also not just a guest, but a repeat guest. Because as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of today's episode, we had you in season 1 for Women in Law. And I would say that was quite an interesting episode. And I think we have another interesting episode here, courtesy your expertise and knowledge. And again, we want to really thank you and hope that we can have you back again, hopefully in the very near future.
It was a pleasure to be here as always. I don't want to become a staple. People might get fed up hearing me, but it's always a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Legal Corner podcast series. For more information, please visit us at our Facebook or Instagram pages, or send your comments to thelegalcornerpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.